be reading the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 1 through 15. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming towards him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Thanks be to God for the reading of his holy word. Amen.
Before I preach, I wanted to express my deepest appreciation to all of you for the wonderful birthday wishes. Thank you so much. My birthday was very special because of you. Look at the flower there. It's from you guys. And I water every day so that I can keep it for a long, long time. Thank you so much. And among the cards that I received, I thought I should share this with all of you. And it is from Bruce Kraut. "Dear Pastor Jisun, what a touching Mother's Day message you gave this past Sunday. Thank you once again. At one point, you talked about how welcoming our church family was in accepting you, a Korean and a woman, as our new pastor. Many years ago, I wondered about having women as leaders of our churches since it was occurring at a number of houses of worship. Yes, I am aware of 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 12 to 14. My thinking is that if God used a woman to proclaim the empty tomb, why not have a woman minister at Audubon United Methodist Church? Proclaim Jesus is the Lord to the community of Audubon. Happy birthday, Pastor Jisun." And Chloe signed her name as well, saying happy birthday. I am telling you, once again, the whole world has to come to our church to learn from you about how to welcome and love someone beyond the comfort zone. I thank you, and I'm so proud of you, and I love you. How is everyone? It's been a while that we sort of imprisoned ourselves in our homes. Is everybody well? I hope so, and I pray so. Look at these photos. The first one is before quarantine. Beautiful, and looks just fine. And the second one is a week later, trying to find a way to have some fun third one is a month later. Isn't it funny? And the last one is now. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. I can. At the comfort food last Wednesday, I asked everyone a question. What would you do if you can, when you can, for the things that you cannot do right now? And everybody gave so many different answers. And of course, it topped, family meals, inviting their family for barbecue or going out to have dinner or lunch with them. We miss all those hugs and touches and family and conversations. We need all that very, very much. And we miss them. One of the answers that actually hit my heart was someone said, I would like to be able to plan things. And he was right. It was William, by the way. That it's been hard for us to plan anything because we do not know what tomorrow will bring to us lately. It's been frustrating and overwhelming, hasn't it? Have you ever felt absolutely overwhelmed? Have you felt like walking away from your desk and just screaming about your work responsibilities, or your financial responsibilities, or your family responsibilities, or church responsibilities? It has been estimated that 90% of all doctors' visits can be attributed directly or indirectly to stress, to the feeling of being overwhelmed. When you think about the stress that many of us are carrying due to the global pandemic, that alone can be a little troubling. We all know that stress not only keeps us awake at night, it also suppresses the body's immune system, which makes us vulnerable to all manner of illness. We get sick, which may cause us a host of other problems related to the inability to fulfill our responsibilities. And that just leads to more stress. It's a downward cycle that rarely has a happy ending. What do you do when you are feeling overwhelmed? Let's see if Bible teaches anything about this. The scripture we read this morning from the book of John is well known to us all. Jesus is on a mountainside with his disciples. When he looks up, he sees a great crowd coming toward him. He says to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" Here is a situation when any normal person would be overwhelmed. It is almost the time for dinner, and suddenly they discover that they have 5,000 unplanned guests. That's just the man. Surely there are women and children as well, an absolute army. Jesus asked Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" They obviously didn't have Wawa or ShopRite and speed dial. Besides, it would take an entire ShopRite to feed that many people. It was very intriguing to read that Jesus asked how they were going to feed the multitude to test Philip. But Jesus already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip has no idea how they will feed this mob. He says to Jesus, 8-month wages wouldn't buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Things look pretty dismal. There's no way they can feed all these people. At least, that is how it appears. Then Andrew speaks up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Then Jesus says something interesting. Have the people sit down. And that's what they did. They had the people sit down. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the leftovers. That's the story. So what can we learn from Jesus how to deal with overwhelming situations? First of all, sit down. I can just see Philip frantically running around. What shall we do? What shall we do? Maybe he's in panic, called a Zoom or Skype video meeting with other disciples. But Jesus knew that panic never solved any problem. Have the people sit down. I have this artificial flower pot in my hand. This is a birthday gift from my daughter when she was 6 years old. She invited me to go to a store with her to buy a birthday gift for me. Of course, she made me pay for it. This is one of my few treasures that I always pack first whenever I move. How heavy do you think this pot is? It is a little less than 2 pounds. It's not really heavy at all to hold. The weight really doesn't matter. What matters is how long you try to hold it. If I hold it for a minute, that's not a problem. If I hold it for an hour, I'll have an ache in my arm. If I hold it for a day, I don't know if I can do it. You will have to call an ambulance. In each case, it's the same weight, but the longer I hold it, the heavier it becomes. And that's the way it is with stress. If we carry our burdens all the time, sooner or later, as the burden becomes increasingly heavy, we won't be able to carry on. You have to put it down for a while and rest before holding it. When we are refreshed, we can think better and we can carry on with the burden. Do you have any burden that you are carrying now? How heavy are they? Whatever burdens you are carrying now, let them down for a moment if you can. And relax. And pick them up later after you've rested. If you don't have to pick them up, it will be actually nicer. Life is short. That may be the great thing about worship. It is a time when we can sit still, reflect, and listen to the voice of God. Or have some quiet moment of your own to just sit and relax and reflect. Jesus knew it was important to settle the crowd down. So he said to his disciples, have them sit down. You see, the problem with feeling overwhelmed is that we see our problems coming at us from every direction. And so it keeps us from solving the problem right in front of us. If we are expending energy worrying about all the things that lie out ahead of us, we cannot effectively focus on the task at hand. No wonder Jesus said on another occasion, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Have the people sit down. That's where we begin. Sit down, calm down, focus on what's immediately before you. Here's the second thing. Acknowledge that God has a plan. John says that Jesus asked Philip how they were going to feed all these people to test him, for Jesus already had in mind what he was going to do. God has a plan. Do you really believe God is unaware of your need? Do you believe that God has the ability to meet your needs? Then relax. God will provide. There's power in trusting God. The same God who multiplied the fishes and the loaves that day long ago can give you the resources you need to meet your obligations. Sometimes we have to go through some painful situations. Yes, before we discern God's hand in our life. We often can see God's hand only after we pass the situation behind. But God is always there. God is always available. God's will is for our best good. Do you remember that scene which Moses asked God to tell him God's name? God replied, I am who I am. Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. A Baptist pastor, David Jeremiah, in his book, Slaying the Giants in Your Life, shared this poem. My name is I am. If you live in the past, it will be very hard, for I am not there. My name is not I was. And if you live in the future, it will be very hard, for my name is not I will be. But if you live in the present, it is not hard, for my name is I am. The great I am is with us, my friends. Relax. God has a plan. Here's the third step. Make a beginning. Andrew came forward to say there was a boy present with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. That would give them something with which to start. Even Christ had to start somewhere. Where are your fishes and loaves? What are the resources that you have today to make your situation better? Take an inventory. Get started with what you have right now. There are many people who suffer from paralysis by analysis, who worry so much about a problem that they never really confront it. Sometimes they can be very religious about this. Well, I'm going to pray about this, and when God gives me a sign, then I'll get started doing something about it. Friend, this message is your sign. Make a beginning. Get started tackling whatever task is at hand. Oh, I know this is easier said than done, but great things come from small beginnings. Winning starts with beginning. An old fable tells of a young bear cub that was puzzled as to how to walk. He asked an old she-bear, "Should I move my right paw first, or my left, or my two front paws together, or the hind ones, or all four at once, or how?" In reply, the old she-bear growled, "Leave off thinking and walk." Sometimes that is what God says to us. Quit analyzing the problem to death. Just get moving. Sit down. Acknowledge that God has a plan. Make a beginning. And finally, gather up leftovers for the next time. Chances are you are going to make it through whatever problem is about to overwhelm you right now. The question is, what will you take from this experience? Christ instructed his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." Why did he do that? I'm sure at least one of them was grumbling. Why save the leftovers? He can just do the same miracle once again tomorrow. That's not the point. Leftovers are important. Whenever you go through a difficult experience, you should learn something about how the world operates, and you should grow stronger in your ability to handle life's difficulties. Each experience in life should make us a better person. That happens when we gather up the leftovers. One thing we are sure to discover is that we were right to trust God. That's a good thing to learn to prepare ourselves for another time of testing. On April 10, 1963, the nuclear submarine Thrasher went too deep into the ocean and was crushed by the surrounding water. It imploded into such tiny bits that almost nothing could be later identified. You see, a sub needs thick steel bulkheads to withstand the pressure of the water as it dives. And yet, isn't it fascinating that in those same deep waters where that steel submarine had been crushed, little fish swim without a care in the world? What is their secret? Why aren't they crushed? Are they made of some new indestructible iron? No, they possess only the thinnest layer of skin. The little fish, it seems, have an internal pressure that perfectly corresponds to the pressure from the outside. The strength, the inner strength, God gave them what they need to swim in the deep places. And God will give us what we need when we swim in deep places. What do you do when we are overwhelmed? Sit down. Acknowledge that God has a plan. Make a beginning, a small step at a time, one by one. After you come through the experience, pick up the leftovers. See what you can learn from it. Use the experience to prepare yourself for the next time you are tested. You are not alone. The same God who multiplied the fishes and the loaves is with you. Remind yourself that you are in the presence of the great I am. You know this song by heart. Be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of you. Beneath his wings of love abide, God will take care of you. Lean, weary one, upon his breast, God will take care of you. Amen, amen, amen.